Hey ADHDers and allies, welcome to the ADHD and Me podcast with your host, ADHD Girl, that's me. On today's episode, we're talking about adult services for ADHD in the UK. Now, though this is about the UK system, don't worry, there's something in there for you Americans as well, because basically, we're talking about private services versus our good old NHS. That's National Health Service. And while yes, it can be a blessing in some ways, it's a right old pain up the bum in others. But don't take my word for it. Joining me today, I have a guest who went through a private diagnosis for their ADHD. Meanwhile, I've been told I need to wait 7 years just to have a conversation about ADHD meds. Yes, it's all going on here at the ADHD and Me podcast. Stay tuned. Thank you very much, Claire, for agreeing to come on today and talk to us about your journey of accessing your ADHD diagnosis through the private sector. And first of all, do you mind sharing with us a little bit about your experience of ADHD, perhaps when you were younger, or what made you think that you've got ADHD, including any symptoms?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for having me. So, yeah, I think obviously looking back, and obviously hindsight's a great thing, when I was growing up in the 80s, early 90s, that sort of time, I was very much labelled as, I guess, a bit of a difficult child, a bit of a dramatic one and things like that. And it was just one of those things, wasn't it? It wasn't, ADHD wasn't known like it is today, like we do. Yeah, I was just labelled as those different things. And I was just the dramatic one. And in school and things like that, I think I was maybe labelled as like smart but lazy. Constantly in my school reports and things, it'd be like, Claire could do this so well if she just applied herself, if she just made the effort to do it. So yeah, so hindsight, looking back on all that, it's okay. It was glaringly obvious, like what was going on, but it wasn't the thing, was it? And then in adult life then, I guess, it was really somebody else in the family actually got a diagnosis as a child. They were about 11 or 12 when they got their diagnosis. And I looked at that person and I was like, that's very similar to the way that I was when I was a child, and some of their behaviours were very similar to the things that I would do when I was a child. And that was when it sparked it for me, and I was like, oh, okay, there might be something here then, that actually maybe I've got ADHD. Maybe that's why I felt that way when I was a kid, and I've still felt that way now. And looking into sort of ADHD symptoms as an adult and as a woman, because as well, that's vastly different.
Whole different ball game.
Yeah, exactly. It presents in that different way than it would with a boy or with a man or girl, with a woman. So yeah, and obviously then we've also got the hormones that come into play as well. I had a sort of good look into then my symptoms and the sort of things that I was seeing in myself and how they compared to the symptoms that are listed on the NHS website as ADHD symptoms. So my diagnosis is obviously ADHD, inattentive ADHD. And obviously that was another thing I learned, that there was obviously hyperactive, combined and inattentive. And yeah, I'm on the inattentive side of things. And things like not being able to concentrate on stuff, or not being able to start a task unless there was something in it that kind of sparks
and just being like, why can't I just get it done?
Exactly. Because that's the thing, isn't it? You know, yourself in your head, you're like, I need to do this. And time's ticking away and you're like, I really need to get started. Whether that's like a work task or whether it's I really need to get up off the couch and hoover. But anything that doesn't spark joy.
It just takes more mental energy, doesn't it, to convince yourself to actually do it. But you're coming at this from a very interesting perspective, because I got diagnosed in 1998. And of course, even then, it wasn't very well known what ADHD was. So you growing up, it must have been such a kind of journey for you to look back with what you know now and see, wow, I definitely had that and nobody knew.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to say, would I go back with this knowledge and kind of look into it when I was a bit younger? I think my life has turned out pretty well, pretty happy, pretty successful in my life, despite that. And I do always say to my parents, when I got diagnosed and stuff, they had to help me fill in some things about when I was young and whatever. I said to them, like, oh, don't be thinking that I blame you for not getting me diagnosed sooner, because I'm very much aware that it wasn't a thing. And it
Yeah.
especially wasn't a thing in girls. It was naughty little boys that had ADHD.
And I should
It wasn't
say
for
this,
girls.
and the only reason I got diagnosed in 1998 is because I presented like a textbook boy with ADHD. Like now I'm more like woman ADHD, very typically. But when I was a child, it was very much the stereotypical boy ADHD. And if it hadn't have been, I definitely wouldn't have got my diagnosis in 1998.
And that's it, isn't it? Yeah. And I think we're similar ages. So actually, even in 1998, I think you'd have probably still been, you wouldn't have been young, would you? You'd have still been a little bit.
10, yes.
Oh, it's still gone through 10 years.
And the thing was, even though you had a label for it and you knew, there wasn't awareness like there is now. Like there was nothing. It was still very much clueless. Just give her the medication and let's get on with it. Kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to talk about your path to diagnosis. So you said obviously a family member had been diagnosed. Is that what made you think, actually, I'm going to try and pursue a diagnosis? Or why did you want that diagnosis? Was it the validation or was it for treatment? Or just talk us a little bit around that, please.
Yeah, it was validation to begin with. It was okay. Because obviously, and you said before about labels, and I think like labels are a really funny thing because some people are very much, oh, why do you have to give it a label? They're just themselves or whatever. And I think, and I've read this somewhere, I think for me, from my perspective, if you don't give it a label, you're going to label yourself. So in my head, I've always thought, Claire, you're lazy. Why you're stupid? Why can't you do this and other people can? So like when I became a mum, I really struggled with that. And I do put that down to my ADHD. I was looking at other mums thinking, why can they do that? Like, why have they got it all together? And I'm here like falling apart with this. So that label thing, if you don't get that label, if you don't get that diagnosis, you're gonna label yourself anyway.
Exactly. It's the absence of a label, isn't it, that creates even more difficulties, and why labels sometimes can have negative points. I totally get where you're coming from, because that label brings you access to empowerment. It gives you the thing to say, this is why I am who I am. And now I've got this information. I can start this process of discovering myself almost.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So to begin with, it was about that validation. It was about that almost that label, that to know either way. I wanted to kind of know either way. And then the further I got into it and the more I was struggling with stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, treatment would be helpful. I looked into the different treatments that I could have. And then once I was diagnosed, I was actually given adapted cognitive behavioral therapy. So went through about 12 weeks of that with a therapist, and that really helped. That was amazing. I never actually asked my therapist, but I think she was actually neurodivergent as well. Yeah, so she got it. And I was saying things and I was like, is that normal? Does everyone feel like that? And she was like, yeah, it's pretty normal. And this is why you're feeling these ways. So yes, that really helped.
Makes such a huge difference, doesn't it, if you're speaking to someone who's also neurodivergent, because trying to navigate a world that's very much geared towards the neurotypical, people don't get it unless they see it through a neurodivergent lens. It sounds so simple, but actually it's massive when you're going through every day knowing there's a reason that you're different, but still not being able to quite access certain things in the same way as other people.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how it is for you, like with your friendship groups. I feel like a lot of my friends, like I have gravitated unknowingly, because some of these friends are friends from childhood. I've unknowingly gravitated towards these neurodivergent. Me and you got on so well.
We just gravitate towards people who are similar. Without being horrible, it's less energy. You don't feel like you have to mask as much when you're having conversations with your, I don't want to say own kind of people, because it makes it sound like we're a different species, but it just makes such a huge difference, doesn't it, in terms of navigating everyday life?
You don't have to explain yourself so much. Like sometimes you may speak to a neurotypical person and you almost like they maybe don't see why you've overreacted about something or acted a certain way, and you almost then have to like maybe afterwards apologize and be like, look, I reacted that way because of this. Whereas I feel like a neurodivergent person would be like, okay, I get that, and then I see that in other people as well. I'll understand why they've reacted reacted in
And
that
it
certain
makes us
way.
quite empathetic, doesn't it? Because we have this guilt, don't we? And I'm not too sure where it comes from, but I know that in neurodivergent women, not even just ADHD women, it's very prominent. We feel guilty over everything, even things we can't control.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. And it's empathy, isn't it? I've always been, a very empathetic person.
Yeah, and yeah, you really have to put the boundaries in place on that, don't you? Because otherwise you almost start taking on the weight of other people's choices. And I've really had to learn how to pull myself back on that, because otherwise you get burnout so much and you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders.
Yeah, definitely. I think over apologizing as well. And sometimes, like, I'll catch myself doing it, or my friend will catch me doing it, and my friends will go, "Why are you apologizing?" And I'm like, "Oh,
Mm.
I'm just sorry that's happened. And it's not my fault, but yeah, it's one of them." So yeah, so validation, and then
Mhm.
it was for the treatment that kind of made me. I just wanted to just be better, like know myself better, understand myself better, and almost give myself that grace in a way, because
Mm.
it's not an excuse. I will say I did that, and it's because of this, because of my ADHD, blah, blah, blah. But I would never like intentionally hurt someone or intentionally do
Mm.
anything bad and then blame ADHD,
Yeah.
because I'm still responsible ultimately for
Yeah. Is it
my
just giving
decisions,
yourself permission, isn't it,
yeah,
to be kind to yourself? I think that's the ultimate thing. It's just giving
yeah,
yourself permission to exist in the way that you are, not who people want you to be.
yeah.
So, what made you decide to go private then? Did you originally think, no, I'm just going to go private because I want to get it done? Were you aware of any wait times, or did you pursue the NHS route at first? How did that come about?
Yeah, no, I literally didn't even look into the NHS
Mm.
route. I think it was mostly because it was easier to go private. So I am so fortunate in my job that I get private health cover. And I was looking into the private health cover and stuff, and they offer this neurodivergent pathway, obviously for ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, like all those different neurodiversities. Yeah, that's the
Mm.
right word. So yeah, so I just looked into that, and I was like, "Do you know, this would be easier." Because sometimes, and this is probably where my laziness creeps in, I thought, if I'm going to go to the doctor and ask to be put on a waiting list or anything like that, I've then got to speak to a human
Mm.
and go and sit in front of someone, in a doctor's surgery, and explain my symptoms and stuff like that. And I think it was the fear of rejection for that,
Yeah.
that
Mm.
whole rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Yeah.
Well, what? And I'm always thinking in my head, what happens if that doctor just turns around to me and says,
Mm.
"Don't be silly"? It was almost the fear
Yeah.
of that stopped
Yeah.
me from pursuing it through the NHS.
Do you know what's really interesting? When I was 17, my medication got withdrew because I was in the gap of they didn't recognize it as something that affected adults. So when I was 17, it was just a case of, okay, you're cured now, take away the meds. Then I had to navigate the world as an adult, a neurodivergent adult, without any kind of support whatsoever in that respect. In some ways, I'm grateful because I was able to develop my own coping strategies. But as I'm sure you're aware, sometimes ADHD gets worse with age because obviously it's all the hormones kicking in, and then
Yeah.
it's the brain slows down a bit over time. So I was like, okay, I might need to potentially pursue ADHD medication because my coping strategies working as well as they used to, because I'm forgetting about the coping strategies.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctors. It linked to what you were saying about that fear of being rejected, because originally I got referred to the mental health practitioner, and I had a huge beef with this. I was like, why am I being referred to this person? It's not a mental health condition, it's neurodivergent. What I found out is she doesn't really do any, all she does is refer you to the adult ADHD service. All I wanted was a conversation about ADHD meds, and she just was in charge of referring you. She referred me. A couple of months later, I got an email, and I've shared this with you before. that there's 6 years and 10 months I've got to wait, not to start ADHD meds, just to have a conversation around whether I want to start ADHD meds. Since been told, and I don't know if I told you this part, I've since been told that I have to get re-diagnosed, like that ADHD doesn't carry on until you're an adult. And the reason that I have to get re-diagnosed is they're not saying, oh, you don't have it now you're an adult. They're saying, because we need to put you on this controlled medication, we need to cover ourselves by giving you another assessment. But this is ridiculous. A big part of me is thinking, oh my gosh, what happens if I don't meet the threshold? What happens if and that's ridiculous. It really is, but I can't. That's where my brain goes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I guess it's almost as if you think, what happens if they diagnosed me wrong when I was 10? And I'm sure that wasn't the case. Like, I'm 100% positive that wasn't the case. But still, I bet, that's where my brain would go.
And also be being a woman with ADHD, because I still think the processes that are in place for diagnosing it is very much geared towards the male ADHD perspective. So, because as women, we internalize it all, and that's very hard to show people on the outside.
And it's like with any illnesses or conditions that affect women, there just isn't enough research into it. Like all the research, all the tests and things like that historically have been done on male bodies, on males. Seatbelts in cars aren't designed for women's bodies, they're designed for male bodies, stuff like that. So it stems from there. I don't want to get into a whole big discussion about the patriarchy, but it's true. It's
it is true. There's no one can deny that.
No. So yeah, no, definitely it's.
So how long, when you went private, how long did it take you from when you first decided to pursue this with and officially opened up the channels via work through this pathway? How long did it take you from that point to get diagnosed?
2 months. Exactly 2 months.
Can I have your work on your jobs?
I'll ask. So yeah, it was literally, I made the phone call on the 28th or something of June, I think it was, 2024.
Oh, that's my birthday.
Oh, is it? And then by the end of August, I had a diagnosis. Obviously, there's lots of work that goes into it. Hard to send.
The guy is huge, though, isn't it? 2 months and 7.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And that must have been so great, because obviously you'd been living with ADHD for a very long time. It wasn't like just because you started pursuing that diagnosis, your ADHD suddenly wasn't a factor. You'd lived for years and years. So to get that validation after just 2 months must have made you feel so much less stressed than if you'd have gone through the NHS route.
Yeah, 100%. I cried, with relief, with shock, on the call with the psychiatrist when she gave me that diagnosis. I cried and I was just like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm crying. She was like, it's relief. She said, all these things that you've told me, all these things that you've put in your form, it's validation, it's relief.
This is why I am who I am. And though it doesn't erase my experience, it means there was a reason for my experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I couldn't understand the crying, but it was just that, that relief.
I'm currently looking into something called Right to Choose. And just for our listeners, I'm going to just explain and summarize a little bit about that. So obviously the 7-year wait is just the standard NHS in this area that we are, because across the UK, there's different wait times. Some areas have 3 years, some areas have 5. Obviously, this kind of area of England has 7 years. But Right to Choose combines the private with the NHS. So it means that you're allowed to pursue a private provider and ask them to effectively take you on. And then you put that referral into your doctor to that provider. And it's the local area, the local NHS board that approved the funding for that. So I think Right to Choose was a way to reduce some of these waiting lists, but it just doesn't seem to be doing so well in this area. I'm looking into that at the moment, but some of them have still got a 2 to 3 year waiting list, which granted is better than 7. But it's still a long time to wait, considering I have a diagnosis of ADHD on my medical records.
Yeah, 100%.
It's insane. What do you think about adult ADHD services in general? Have you been able to access any services besides? I know you talked a little bit about the therapy. Were you referred to that via work as well, or?
Yeah, so that was still through that private provider. And actually, the medication that I'm on currently as well, that I've been going through titration for, that's through the private provider still as well.
Wow.
So I've actually not looked into anything NHS wise because I have been so well supported through that private provider. I think the tricky bit will come when I try to get shared care agreement. I actually already know that my particular doctor's surgery don't accept any shared care.
This is another kind of issue, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Although I have been on that medication, they have titrated me up to the correct dosage. I'm super happy on that medication. Like, it works so well. It has improved my life, my focus, everything. So yeah, if they don't accept that shared care, I'm not sure how I'll land with that.
It's almost like being validated and then someone saying, actually, that validation doesn't count, isn't it? It's soul destroying.
Yeah.
This is what I'm hearing across the board. People are having issues when they move over from private and try to go via shared care.
Yeah, but I think it is different if you do it through to choose.
Yes,
Because
I think it's easier, but
yeah,
I do still know that people have problems. But then why shouldn't you be able to go private? Like, why shouldn't you be able to wait 2 months instead of 7 years? And then it's almost like you're being punished for that by being denied the opportunity for that shared care to move over to your doctor. So just to clarify, because we do have a lot of American listeners, shared care is when it's a bridge between the private and the NHS. So once you've got a private diagnosis of ADHD, you get started on the meds and everything. Eventually, the hope would be that you would move over to your doctors on a shared care plan with your private provider, and then the doctor would start dispensing the medication, just because it sometimes makes it a little bit cheaper and easier to access. But then in your case, and like a lot of people I've spoke to, when they've tried to move over from private, they've sometimes been denied that share care because the GP doesn't want to take on that responsibility.
yeah, and I understand it. So I do understand the NHS is struggling. There's not enough money. There's not enough resource.
It comes down to politics, doesn't it?
Of course, absolutely it does. So I do sympathize with that because I've got a few people in my family, few friends that work for the NHS, and they are absolutely like trying their best. They're just humans at the end of the day.
It's a bigger issue, isn't it? It's a system issue.
It's a huge issue. Like, it's the system that's broken. It's not the wonderful people that work in the NHS. It's the system. And how do we fix that? No idea.
There's no clear answer, is that they've decided an ADHD task force within the NHS about 2 years ago. And I was really happy with that when I heard the news. But then since then, there's been silence. And my concern seems to have been confirmed, because my concern was it was just a way of trying to get the wait times down and to challenge the political climate of it, as opposed to actually dealing with the issues that people are having. But I could be wrong. Maybe, hopefully that'll change, but we're still obviously waiting for some kind of like thing to happen on that. Thank you so much, Claire. I think this has been such an important conversation, because I think it's really going to help people to understand, one, a little bit more about the UK system in general, especially for people who perhaps are pursuing a diagnosis or don't understand what it means to go private or go via the NHS. But also, I think some of the things you've touched upon around validation and female ADHD has been like so on point with what people are going through right now. So thank you very much for your time.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me.
Wow, I'm so inspired by people who get an ADHD diagnosis later in life, and it leads them to the validation they were always denied. Trying to navigate a neurotypical world when your brain is wired differently makes you question everything. But timely access to support services, whether NHS or private, can make all the difference in the world. Join us next time on the ADHD and Me podcast, where we'll be talking about how the UK pathways for AUDHD, that's autism meets ADHD, are failing thousands. Until then, stay strong, ADHDers and allies.